Everyone laughed when my sister tore up my law school acceptance letter, even my mom clapped. They said I was a disgrace to the family, and my sister, Julia, shouted across the dinner table, "You'll end up serving fries, not justice." But not a single one of them knew the truth. I had already passed the bar. In another state. If that shocked you, just wait till the end. Like, comment, and subscribe because this story only gets crazier. You won't believe what her fiancé did next. That night, I locked myself in my room, not out of sadness but strategy. For 2 years, I had worked double shifts, studied through power cuts, and even slept in my car some nights. All while my family thought I was just wasting time. I never told them because I knew they'd sabotage it like they did with everything I cared about. Julia had always been the favorite, top grades, perfect smile, corporate fiancé, and me. I was just the rebel who chose law over medicine, who stood up to dad when he tried to marry me off at 20. But none of them knew I had already won. I didn't just become a lawyer. I became a federal judge's assistant and I was about to be promoted. Still, I kept quiet. Until Julia invited me to her engagement party, not to celebrate, but to humiliate. I knew the trap. The second I stepped into that hall, everyone was dressed like it was the Oscars, and I was in a plain black dress. They whispered, they pointed. Julia's best friend even accidentally spilled wine on me and said, "Oops, thought you were the help." I smiled. Because I knew something they didn't. Then came the mic. Julia tapped it, grinning, and said, "Everyone, please welcome my fiancé Edward, the man who saved me from becoming like my little sister." People laughed. And then Edward walked up to me. He froze, his eyes wide. Slowly, he bent forward and said with a sharp breath, "Your Honor, I didn't know you were her sister." The room went dead silent. Even Julia's smile fell off her face. Julia blinked, like her brain couldn't register what Edward just said. "Why did you just call her?" she asked, her voice cracking through the microphone. Edward didn't even look at her. He was still staring at me, his face pale. "Solara, I had no idea. You didn't mention any of this." I calmly took a sip from the champagne flute I hadn't touched until now. I didn't think it was important. I like to keep my personal and professional lives separate. You could hear people whispering. Phones subtly came out of purses. The DJ stopped the music. Even the waiter holding the cake froze like a statue. Julia stormed toward us, pulling Edward by the sleeve. "Edward, you know her?" "What do you mean, Your Honor?" He turned to her slowly. "Julia, the woman you've been calling a failure for years. She's not just a lawyer. She's the youngest associate federal judge in our entire district. I've seen her in court. She's the one who wrote the opinion that crushed that billion-dollar fraud case last month." Gasps echoed across the room. Julia shook her head. "No, that's not possible. She failed law school." I tore up her letter. "I remember." I stepped forward. "That letter was just a backup. I already had a full-ride scholarship from a firm that you said would never even read my resume. You remember that, Julia?" You laughed in my face. She stepped back, like she'd been slapped. Our mother stood frozen near the cake table, her wine glass trembling in her hand. Edward looked genuinely heartbroken now. "You told me your sister was jobless. That she was living off pity. I never imagined this." I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice just enough. "Maybe next time, ask questions before you believe a jealous liar." That's when Edward said the words that truly shattered Julia. "If I'd known she was your sister, Julia, I would have thought twice about this engagement." And just like that, the room turned. Whispers turned to judgment. Julia was no longer the golden girl. She was the woman who tried to bury her own sister. And failed. Julia's face drained of color. "Edward, what are you saying?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper now. Nothing like the confident, smug tone she used when she mocked me just moments ago. "I'm saying," Edward replied, glancing around the silent room, "that I don't want to marry someone who hides the truth, manipulates people, and humiliates her own sister just to look better." Then he looked directly at me. "So, I'm sorry. I had no idea. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to." The room was doing the talking now, stares, whispers, some even recording. This was the same crowd that laughed at me a few minutes ago. Now, they couldn't even meet my eyes. Julia's voice cracked. "You're not breaking up with me at my engagement party. This is my day. She's doing this to ruin me." Edward shook his head. "No, Julia, you ruined yourself. All Solara did was show up." Just then, Uncle Greg, The one who once told me I was a waste of family name, stepped closer. Solara, is this true? You're a judge now. I turned to him, smiling. I'm not allowed to call myself that officially until next month, but yes, I've already been confirmed. My nameplate's being engraved as we speak. The entire room shifted. People who once ignored me were now trying to shake my hand. A cousin who hadn't talked to me in 5 years suddenly said, "We always knew you'd do something big." Solara, my old teacher, who once told me I wasn't judge material, looked like she'd swallowed her lipstick. Julia, meanwhile, was unraveling. "This isn't fair," she cried. "She's just lucky. I worked hard too. Why is she getting all the attention?" I finally spoke. "Because while you were busy tearing people down, Julia, I was quietly building myself up. You thought you buried me. You didn't know I was a seed." The entire hall went quiet again. That's when my father, who hadn't said a word all evening, stepped forward, slowly, cautiously. "Solara," he said, "you should have told us." I looked at him, the man who once called me a disgrace in front of the whole extended family, and what would you have done if I had? Let me guess. Tried to stop me. Or mocked me until I gave up again. He had no answer. That's when Edward did something none of us expected. He took off the engagement ring he had just placed on Julia's hand earlier and walked up to me. He didn't say a word, just offered me the ring in his palm. A stunned hush fell again. I looked down at it, then back up at him. "Keep your ring," I said. "This wasn't about you." I turned around and walked out of the hall, not defeated, but in complete control. And for the first time in my life, everyone watched me leave. In complete silence. Outside the hall, the night was quiet, but inside, the storm I left behind was only just beginning. My phone buzzed nonstop. Texts, missed calls, voicemails. Family members who hadn't spoken to me in years were suddenly interested. "We should catch up sometime. Proud of you, Solara." One even had the nerve to ask if I could help his son get a job in law. I didn't reply to a single one. As I sat in the back seat of the car, my driver assigned to me by the judge's office turned and asked, "Back to the chambers, ma'am?" I smiled. "No, take me home. I think I've earned one quiet night." The next morning, I woke up to headlines. Engagement party turns into legal shocker as groom recognizes bride's secret judge sister, Your Honor. The mic drop moment that crushed a family's lies. Judge Solara silences room with 4 words. It had gone viral. Someone had filmed the moment Edward said, "Your Honor." TikTok, Instagram, even news outlets were picking it up. And there I was, in my black dress.com, composed, watching as the internet did what it does best, expose the truth. Julia's perfect image was unraveling in real time. People dragged her in the comments. "How do you lose both your fiancé and your moral compass in one night?" Others called me the queen of silent revenge. But the best part, an email. It came from the Chief Justice himself. Subject: "Well done, Solara. What happened last night wasn't just justice, it was dignity. I think it's time we talk about a higher bench." I stared at the screen, stunned. After everything I'd endured, the rejection, the humiliation, the years of being called worthless, now they wanted to promote me even higher. I walked to the mirror. For the first time, I didn't see the girl trying to prove something. I saw the woman who had already won. That evening, as I walked into court, briefcase in hand, head high, I passed 2 lawyers, whispering in the hallway. One of them said, "Is that her? That's the one from the engagement video, right?" The other nodded. "Yeah. Judge Solara, she destroyed her whole family with just 1 sentence." I didn't correct them because for once, they were absolutely right. A week passed, and just when I thought the chaos had finally cooled down, an unexpected knock echoed through my apartment. I opened the door, and there she was, Julia, no makeup, puffy eyes, hair tied up in a messy bun. The sparkle, the arrogance, the smug confidence. All gone. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. "I need to talk," she said quietly. I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "You've got 2 minutes. She stepped inside like a shadow, her voice trembling. "You embarrassed me. Ruined my reputation. People at work are whispering." Edward moved out. "Mom won't even take my side anymore." I raised an eyebrow. "And this is my fault." She looked up, her eyes glossy. "I didn't know you were doing all that. You were always so invisible." I laughed, cold and quiet. "No, Julia, I was never invisible. You just refused to look." She sat on the couch, burying her face in her hands. I thought I was the successful one. I thought if I stayed on top, people would respect me. But all it took was one moment to flip everything. That's the thing about truth, I said. It doesn't knock. It crashes through. She sniffled, then looked up. How did you do it, Solara? How did you survive all these years? How did you stay so strong? I walked to the window, staring out over the city skyline, because I stopped needing your approval a long time ago, and I started building something for me. You tried to bury me, Julia, but I was already growing under the dirt. She stood there in silence. Then, finally, do you hate me? I turned to face her. I don't hate you, I said slowly, but I'm done saving people who set me on fire just to stay warm. She didn't argue. She just nodded, walked out, and for the first time in her life, didn't have the last word. That evening, I received a letter, handwritten from my father. I was wrong. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I wanted to say I'm proud. I just wish I'd said it sooner. Attached was an old photograph, me at 10, holding a book bigger than my head, standing in front of the local courthouse. He'd kept it. I placed the photo on my desk, right beside my engraved nameplate, Judge Solara Grant. The past no longer defined me. It was just the reason I built my own courtroom and made them all watch while I claimed it.